Welcome to the webinar. My name is Jennifer Henniger. I am going to be the host today. My speaker today, I'll introduce him in a minute, has a lot of experience, and we're excited to just, welcome you and share with you this overview that will help you with some things you can do to start your estate planning. One of the things we're going to talk about is long-term care insurance. A lot of people have questions about long-term care, so we're going to, give you a high-level overview of that. We're going to talk about life insurance, power of attorney, the access upon death and bank accounts. So those are important things to know about as well. We also will talk about a transfer on death and kind of compare it to like a payable on death and share with you what those are. We're going to talk about beneficiaries because it's so important to know that we have the correct beneficiaries listed. We'll talk about burial policies, a living will, advance directive. We're going to talk about trust. And we're even going to talk about what we call a legacy folder, and we'll tell you what kind of things you would want to put inside your legacy folder. And then once we've done that, we're going to talk about pets and livestock. I mean, we live in a lot of rural areas in Oklahoma and Texas, and those are some things that everybody loves their pets, and sometimes people may forget about their livestock. And then we'll have a question and answer session. So if you have questions at any time during the webinar, you can go ahead and type them into the chat box, but we'll take time at the end to answer all the questions at that time. So that's how the process is going to go. So the first thing I want to do is I want to introduce John Carey, who is our guest speaker today. And interestingly, y'all, he started the department here, the investment department at First United, and he is our trust officer. So John, I'm going to quit talking, and I would love for you to tell us about all these great things, and I'm going to turn it over to you. So let's begin with our first one.
Okay, perfect. Welcome, everybody. I appreciate everybody taking time out of their day to participate in this. It's a subject, obviously, that's near and dear to all of our hearts because it touches all of our clients and all of our customers across the bank platform that we have. And we'll talk a little bit about that as we go through the slides and go through the day. We did this same program several years back in an in-person format, and so we thought we'd try it virtual, and that way we could revisit it and have this program for others to view as well. So starting out today, and like Jennifer said, we'll have questions at the end, and I'll try to be as brief as I can on the slides and the presentation, and then try to answer any questions that you may have. Jennifer and I have discussed in the past, we could talk for a week on this subject and not answer questions that you guys may have. And so we want to make sure and get to those, as many of those as we can. So starting out today, kind of the top of the mountaintop would be long-term care insurance. It's something that everybody knows that they need to have, but very few people do. And part of the reason is it's probably one of the things that is probably the furthest step out. It's hard enough with the way the economy is to afford the things that we need on a daily basis, from car insurance to turning your lights on, to making your house payment. And so long-term care insurance would be something that is vitally important, but is probably one of the last things on people's list by the time they get through burial policies and regular life insurance and all the day-to-day things that we come up against and our customers come up against. Long-term care insurance obviously is like any insurance. It's more affordable when you're younger. And guess what? When we're younger, we don't think we're ever going to need it. And so the statistics tell us that, 1 in 3 of us will. It certainly does help if you have it, but I would say it would be something that there are many more things that we need to address and take care of before we get to a long-term care policy. But that's kind of the cliff notes on long-term care insurance. So Jennifer, next slide. So life insurance in general is not much more important than long-term care, but can play a much more important role. as most of you know, working here at the First United Bank, we have life insurance that's accessible to us, or policies that we may already have access to. And so, when we talk to our clients and our customers, how many of those clients and customers do we see that are two-income households? And if one of them loses their income or one of them passes away, how devastating can that be? As far as, do they rent their home? Do they own their home? Do they pay for, do they have car payments? Can they afford? And we'll talk a little bit about a burial policy as well. But, what are the things that could help somebody at least be able to get some breath in their lungs when a tragedy happens to their family? And so there's all kinds of life insurance, whole life policies, term life policies. I've always been an advocate of term life. Technically, it doesn't build income or build wealth, but you set it up for a specific term. For example, I have done term policies on myself personally, and the reason for that is I hope that by the time I get to retirement age, that I have some form of Social Security in retirement. What happens if something happened to me before that point? And so that's kind of the role that I view insurance taking, and that's why I use a term policy. So, for example, when I was 40, I would have taken out a term policy on myself until I was 70. And that way I know that by the time I'm 70, Social Security and retirement should be fairly in a fairly good place, and I won't necessarily need the life insurance. But if I'm 42 or 47, how does my wife take care of the house and the kids and the things that happen on a day-to-day basis? And so that would kind of be my short take on life insurance. And so I would highly recommend some life insurance for everyone, some shape, form, or fashion. And that can be done through a whole host of things. It can be done through First United's insurance department. It can be done through your local insurance agent if you have a relationship already built with someone. And so those are things that I sure think that you would need to explore, certainly as a need. So power of attorney are important. They're not as important as they were at one time, and we'll kind of address that too with POD and TOD. But a power of attorney is still an important document for someone to have if they need to make medical decisions or banking decisions on your behalf if something happens and you become in an incapacitated state. And so you want to make sure that someone can pay your light bill, pay your lawn guy, whatever that may be thrown at you in a time when things are in a really, really spooky way. If you're incapacitated, and you want to make sure that your children or your beneficiaries have a way to take care of the needs that arise on a daily basis for you. So access upon death and bank accounts, and then the next slide is going to be payable on death and transfer on death. And so there are so many things that have become, I want to say, more modern. So back when I started, 30 years ago, you always had to put someone else on your checking account with you. There was just no other access or way around that. And so it's just very important to make sure that you have bank accounts or safe deposit boxes, et cetera, updated to where if something were to happen to you, someone has access to those and can get, important documents. Used to, you stored all your important documents in safe deposit boxes. Now, a lot of those are electronic. And so, just as we go through life over the next 30 years, things will probably be even updated a little bit better. But it's just making sure that you have those things updated, because when the time comes, and something tragic has happened, you certainly want it to be as easy as possible on all the parties involved. So transfer on death and payable on death are two things that have really revolutionized what we do in this industry. And so if someone brings something to me, I can immediately tell you if it's something banking related or securities related. Payable on death would be anything dealing with bank related items, savings accounts, checking accounts, CDs, all the things we deal with on a daily basis, right? And so if I see something that is transfer on death or TOD, that's going to tell me it's probably something at Edward Jones, something on the investment side. And we even can go as far as we can do, so we can do as an industry transfer on death and payable on death for people. You still have to visit an attorney if you want to do a transfer on death warranty deed on your property, which is something that has now become available. So I had a customer here at First United years ago that has now passed away, and his two sons are really good customers of the bank just because we took care of their parents. But they had a checking account, a CD, and their home. And that was pretty much all that they had, which is what most people have that we visit with on a daily basis. And so we just made sure that they had payable on death on their checking account. We made sure that they had payable on death on their CD, and we made sure that they saw an attorney and got a transfer on death warranty deed on their property. And so when the time came and they passed, it was really easy and simple for their two sons to take care of everything without having to go to court, without having to probate the estate. And it just made it really, really simple in a time where you don't want to have to worry about a lot of things. Beneficiaries are something that, so payable on death and transfer on death function like beneficiaries on normal non-retirement accounts. Beneficiaries are going to come into play on anything that you have that is retirement related. And so you could have a payable on death on your checking account. If you had an IRA or an individual retirement account, you would have beneficiaries, which would serve as a POD. It's very important to make sure that you periodically check those beneficiaries to make sure that they're updated, because as most of us know, life happens and we may have children, we may have a different spouse, we may have had our parents on there. And so there's a whole host of things that could happen, and beneficiaries are on a permanent basis. So if I have someone on there that I didn't want and something happens to me, that person is legally entitled to part of the funds. And so there's just odd anomalies that you want to make sure that you're always trying to pay attention to and take care of. And a personal example would be our retirement here at work. So I'm married, I have 3 kids, all of them 2 in college, but most of them semi-adult age. And so I have my wife as my primary beneficiary, I have my children as contingent beneficiaries, so everything should be fine. Well, it dawned on me, we forced the kids to go on a 20th wedding anniversary with us. And I thought, this is not something I want to think about, but God forbid, if there was a plane accident, who's going to get the money? And so I had to go in and put my dad on as a contingent beneficiary, just in case the 1 in a million shot something happened. And we don't want to think like that, and we hope that those things never happen, but unfortunately they do. And we probably all know someone that has had some kind of rare instance or case happen. And so I say all that to say you always want to just go in and make sure that your beneficiaries are updated and the way that you want them more than anything, and make sure that we're having those conversations with our customers. So it's real simple to get into our routine. right? So we're all busy. We have people coming in and out all day long. And so, you're like, oh goodness, just I got 5 people waiting on me, 2 people out in the lobby. It's just imperative that we take an extra few seconds and say, hey, I know you're doing your RMD today, and we're going to get that put into your checking account for you. But it wouldn't be a bad time just to revisit these beneficiaries. Do you have them set up the way that you wish? And a lot of times they will let us know, yes, everything looks perfect, or, we've had a tragedy and I've had a child pass away. And so we want, this to go to a couple of other people or to a charity or a church of their choice as well. So just want to make sure that we're taking a few extra seconds when we can to have those conversations with our customers. Next slide. Burial policy. So these have been popular for years. There's modernization through cremation and other things have made burial policies a little more affordable. There was a time, 10 or 15 years ago when you could just always count on your burial policy going up, 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 up. And so it's not as huge of a need as it was at one time, but we had a lot of conversations with clients back when, as we can all remember, just a few short years ago when interest rates were, paying 0.25, a quarter of 1% on CDs. And so we had a lot of conversations with clients about, hey, maybe we should dip our toe into exploring burial policies and going ahead and taking some of these funds we have in CDs and opening a burial policy while rates were extremely low. The last thing, as you can imagine, is people need to be worried about how are we going to pay for things in this time of need when there's been something really terrible happen, even if it's something that's expected, even if your parents or our clients' parents, or even our clients for that matter, are older, and we all know that something's going to happen one day. This is just one more thing. And I always try to coach spouses on, if you really love your wife or really love your spouse, why not look into doing this where it's just one less hurdle that they have to face in the grieving process, something that's kind of already in motion or set in motion. So it's just one less thing that they have to struggle with when the time arises. So obviously this falls into a line of succession of, make sure you have payable on death, transfer on death, make sure you have your beneficiaries. I would make sure that you have some form of life insurance, and then I would look from there to a burial policy. So wills, living wills, and advanced directives, we touched on this a little bit back with the power of attorney. So, wills and living wills are, I'm not going to say a thing of the past, but they're not as dire as they once were. So, used to 30 years ago, this was the option that we had. Someone had to go to an attorney, get a will or a living will or an advanced directive. And so with POD and TOD, we have come a long way. And beneficiaries, PODs and TODs actually take precedence over something that might have been written in a will 30 years ago. And so they're important. The advanced directive part is probably the most important part. We have these conversations all the time with clients on, and you guys see it too. Start having those conversations with your children on things that they might want or need. And I have found that children don't want to talk about it. Hey, mom, hey, dad, I don't want to think about when something happens to you. And so I've tried to get clients to reframe the conversation of, hey, we've got a lot of stuff in the house. We've got a lot of tractors. We've got a lot of furniture. We've got a lot of figurines, whatever that might be. And we're going to start, your mom and I are going to start paring this down. And so is there anything in the house that you want that is important to you? And so it kind of reframes the conversation from, hey, there's going to be a time when I pass away. Is there anything that you want? And it kind of reframes it to, hey, we're kind of not moving into a tiny home, but we're trying to pare things down because we're tired of dusting everything, or keeping the lawnmowers running, or what do you have? And so I say all that to say, I've had people as comically, put people's names on sticky tabs and put on there, but there is something that is insignificant to our clients that is absolutely earth-shattering to their children. It can be, dad's tackle box. It can be mom's cook apron. It can be the family Bible. It can be dad's recliner. It can be something that seems like it has zero worth, but absolutely means something to somebody. And so it's just making sure that we keep those conversations out in front of our clients and help them, just like with the beneficiaries, just taking the extra step and the few extra minutes to just talk through with them things that we have seen as a industry that have, people have run up against and had some of the biggest arguments over. And the last thing people want is their kids to argue when something happens to them. And so it's just trying to open those conversations, take a few extra minutes, and visit with them about things that we have seen, all of us have seen, that our clients have run up against. So trust, once again, revocable and living trust are something that we do. You would go to an attorney to have the actual legal document drawn up. I always recommend that people come in and talk to us beforehand, because we are here to serve our clients. And so not that, being charged for something is bad, but, why not come into us and talk through the things and use our expertise on things that we have seen in the past before you go to an attorney and it's you're being charged by the hour. So you can get a lot of those things out of the way with us. Trusts are not, once again, as important as wills have become kind of not insignificant, but a lot less important, because you have payable on death and transfer on death. A lot of what we see in our industry are trusts that pertain to special needs children, parents that have a special needs child, or someone that has two kids that are great and one that's wayward. And we have all seen that. All of our customers, run up against that. We all have had customers that have had family issues, and, maybe they want child A to get their part of the money outright, and maybe child B gets $500 a month for the rest of their life to make sure that they don't blow it all at once. And so trusts do have a place in financial planning with people, but they're getting fewer and fewer as a big need. So legacy folders. So I jokingly tell my kids all the time, if something happens to your mother and I, go into the office and get the black book out. And the black book is where, we try to, like I said, back in the day, you kept everything in your safe deposit box. That's still a good plan as well. But we keep this black folder that has, Social Security cards. It has, titles to the vehicles. It has burial policies if you have them. And then we have a document that I think Jennifer is going to share or have the ability to share. And it's a document that basically is a PDF document that we send out to clients. It's very long. It's 16 pages. And it's what my family needs to know. And it is a whole host of things from, who is your insurance agent? Do you have a burial policy? All these things that we take for granted that we know that our kids and our clients' kids have never paid attention to. What is the sprinkler code? what is the code to get into the garage? My dad did a stint in the hospital back in December. My mom, of course, was not going to leave his side. And so I had to go by their house and, get some things, medications, toothpaste, change of clothes, just grab some things. I had no idea how to get in their house. It just wasn't something that I ever felt like I needed to know. And so, I was texting my mom, hey, what's the garage code to get in? I have no idea. And so they seem comical, but all of that can feel like it's a mountain to climb when you're going through something tragic. And so the easier that you could make it and the easier tools that we can provide our clients to help them make it easier on their children is a win-win, and it's we're going to comically talk about a couple of things, but this What My Family Needs to Know document is something that I always try to get to customers early and just tell them, work on it a page at a time. There's some pages in there that aren't going to apply to you, but once you start putting it down on paper, you really realize that things can be pretty complex in a hurry if you don't have, access to some of these. And so our next slide that Jennifer put up is kind of our comical slide. And so we laugh about pets and livestock. What do pets and livestock have to do with someone's financial plan? Well, most of our clients and most of us come from or reside in a rural part of our areas, so the areas that we serve. And so a lot of our clients have livestock and even pets for that matter. So to pets, to that point, so mom and dad are retired, they're getting to do what they want to, they're traveling, and God forbid, they have a terrible traffic accident. Well, where do they board their dogs, or do they have dogs? Is someone feeding the dogs? We kind of laugh about that, but it's something that's, very, very necessary. And we kind of need to know what's going on with those. And so I refer back to a gentleman who had to go into the hospital, and his mom actually lived in Seguin, Texas. He lived in Calera, and she had to make a trek up here because he had several dogs and some other livestock that he was taking care of on a daily basis. And so she made arrangements for some neighbors to take care of some things while he was in his hospital stay. Livestock, on the other hand, so a lot of people that we run up against and that we cross paths with may have lease pastures. And so, I've seen countless times where a wife will say, oh, that's his thing. He takes care of that. It gives him something to do. He gives him something to stay busy with. And so she knows he has something, but she never really pays attention to where it is, how many horses or cattle are it, goats, etc. Is there a note on those? And so I jokingly tell people, you always want to believe that someone will do the right thing, but unfortunately people don't. Hence, always trying to create identity theft. But there's a really good chance that if your husband or spouse has a lease place somewhere, and all of a sudden your neighbor realizes, hey, no one's coming to get these cattle, they may disappear. And if they do, how much more complicated could that be if he also had a note on those cattle? And so I say that to say, it may be his thing. It may be something that is his meditation and that he does, and it gives him peace of mind. But it's important that we communicate with one another on where things are and to the extent that there could be notes or the number of head or where the places are. And so, because we all think that nothing terrible is going to happen, and sure enough, unfortunately, we see it on a daily basis where something does unexpectedly happen to someone. And then there's, once again, another hurdle of trying to figure out what someone does in this time when they need to be focused on loved ones. So we always put the pets and livestock graph up there because it looks comical, and it is comical, but boy, it can sure be a conversation that we need to be having with our clients.
Indeed. So we're going to offer you an opportunity to take a quick survey before we go into our questions and answers, and that also will give you a chance to type your questions in. But if you do take the survey, you can scan the QR code that's showing on the screen, and when you scan the QR code with your camera, like you're going to take a picture of it, a link will pop up on your phone, and you'll click on that link, and it'll take you to a website to answer the quick survey. I'm also going to put into the chat box a link in case you're joining from your cell phone, so you can just click on the link that I dropped into the chat box, and that will let you answer the survey as well. I'm going to start the timer for 2 minutes. It probably won't even take you a minute, but I want to give you plenty of time. Plus, you can put your questions in as well. All right. I'm now going to move to our Q&A slide where we'll ask questions. So the first question, and again, you'll just ask your question through the chat box. We have a guest who says, does a transfer on death work in both Oklahoma and Texas? So that's the first question.
Yeah, absolutely. So transfer on death is universal wherever someone is. It could work for our clients anywhere that they are.
Okay. And the other question they asked about that is that transfer on death better than a will?
So it's easier. It's a lot easier. So transfer on death is automatically going to allow you to put a couple of beneficiaries on something just like payable on death, and it actually supersedes a will. So if if a parent comes in and one child is wayward and they take that child off and they put the other two kids on payable on death, but they have a will that says money goes to all three, it goes off the payable on death. So yeah, it's a very convenient way to update things without having to run back and forth to an attorney to update your will every time something changes.
Awesome. And here was another question. A lady and her husband, they have minor children. They have a 3-year-old and an 8-year-old. If something unexpectedly happened to both of them, being that they're minor children, and they would want all their assets to go to their children, even if they're still minors, what is the best way for them to set that up so that the money goes to the minor children?
So in that case, if you would want to try to set some form of a trust where you might designate that, hey, if something, God forbid, happens, we want our children to go to a brother, a sister, sister-in-law, brother-in-law, and the trust would certainly help make sure that money is not ill-spent. And a prime example we ran up against the other day was there was a child who had been adopted, and the biological mother passed away. The adoptive father, they were really concerned about whether he would, spend the money in the child's best interest or not. And so there's a lot of restrictions on the trust on what can be spent. And we're actually going back to the court system to see if we can modify that a little bit, because it was originally designated that the money would be turned over to the child at age 25. Well, I have a concern about investing in the child now. What if they want to go to college, things like that. And so when the child was, say, 7, 8, or 9, the concern was we didn't want the adoptive father spending money on things, Disney World trips for everybody, things of that nature. And so I would say if you have young children, you may want to explore some form of trust to make sure that the money is spent properly on their education and their health and well-being.
Excellent. So the next question is for someone who they said that they haven't had an opportunity to really even start yet, and they would like to know what would be something that they need to, like a great place to start to help them to start planning.
Yeah, so we all talk to customers all day long, and so I would say the easiest place to start is just make sure that you have payable on death and transfer on death on any banking related or securities related items that you have, and then just kind of gradually work your way out from there. But yeah, that would be an excellent place to start, to just make sure that things aren't tied up, that things go to who you want them to in a very timely manner.
Yeah, beneficiaries for sure. And one thing that I thought of, John, is I know like at First United, we, with our employee, our EAP program, Employee Assistance Program, they have a will service, and you can even do a will for like less, it's like $15, it's like $14.95, and they're state specific. So I would even say once you've done those things, then check into that, because it's super affordable with like the Employee Assistance Program. So check with your employers to see as well. Yep. Would you agree?
No, exactly. Yeah, well, First United has a lot of good programs, not only from a financial standpoint, but just health and wellness. So yeah, I would explore anything that our employer has.
Mm-hmm. And then another person says, can you have a trust, specifically a spendthrift trust, as a beneficiary?
Yes.
Maybe you know what that means.
Yeah, so you can. So if you have a retirement account or payable on death, you can actually name a trust as a beneficiary. So for example, if you had, it doesn't have to be a large amount, but if you had a large amount in a retirement account and you wanted to make sure that, the kids didn't get it and spend it all at once, or if you had a large CD, you could put a trust on there, and it would funnel through to the trust and then go according to what the trust document said.
Excellent. And the next person asked, what taxes are required to pay if there's a trust inheritance or estate taxes? I don't know if that's something you can answer.
Yeah, so obviously you always want to work with, your local CPA. We always want to work with your local CPA too, to make sure that everybody's on the same page and we're all singing from the same sheet of music. Basically, estates are relatively large now. And so if you don't go over that threshold, there's not going to be a lot of taxes that have to be paid. As far as an IRA goes, there could be some taxes that would need to be paid for the beneficiary on that, but they've loosened that up quite a bit in the last several years to where someone can spread that out over a 10-year period as opposed to having to take a lump sum. So my example of that would be, you and your husband are working and mom and dad pass away and leave you a $300,000 IRA. Well, you're working, your spouse is working. If you have to take $300,000 on top of that, it can really mess up your tax situation. And so they've now changed it to where you could spread that out over a 10-year period. So you could take, $30,000 a year for a 10-year period, so you wouldn't be hit with as much taxes as if you took it in a lump sum.
Awesome. And then Tina says, couldn't just a life insurance policy pay for burial services?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, so you could use life insurance to pay for burial. Anything that, so I would say, back to the question of where do you start, I would say you start with payable on death, transfer on death, beneficiaries, and then start with some form of life insurance. And if you say, hey, I've got this life insurance policy set up to pay for the land or the house or to pay the cars off, and you want to do a burial policy separate, that is A-okay. But yes, the short answer is anything is better than nothing. And so you could very generically say, I want a $10,000 life insurance policy, and the main focus for that is I want to make sure that the burial needs are met. Yeah, absolutely.
And here's an interesting question. Karen says, can you get a life insurance policy on an ex-spouse if there's a financial reliability?
Yeah,
So
technically you can. So yeah, I mean, so there are some things that, the bank does it on some of their executives, as far as a key man policy, where if something were to happen to one of them, how do you replace that? So yeah, if there is some payments that will need to be paid or debts that need to be paid, yeah, most certainly you could take life insurance policies out in that case.
Okay. The next one is, will transfer on death, is it applicable to real estate?
Yes. So transfer on death, you do have to see an attorney for that. It's called a transfer on death warranty deed. And you can do that for your home, for land that you own, lots that you own, rent houses that you own. You can do it for anything like that to make sure that it's taken care of.
Okay, and this having a trust versus a payable on death, is there a tax benefit for your beneficiaries by having one versus the other, a trust versus a payable on death?
No, not really, not in probably 99.9% of the cases that we see. You guys know better than most. I mean, most of the people that we see are just hardworking folks that are, going through their daily life, and anything that we can do to help them is a win for everybody. If you run across that client that is a high net worth client, there could be some advantages for them, obviously, to doing the trust, but more oftentimes than not, payable on death will certainly address most everybody's issues.
Okay, and somebody asked about the What My Family Needs. I'm going to send that out with a link to this recording as well. So once we get all that ready, I will send an email to everybody who registered, and so you'll all get a copy of that. So yes, you'll get that in an email from me. And then I think I have time for another one. Do I have to pay an attorney, somebody's asking, for transfer on death to do that if they only have a house and 2 cars?
Yeah, so you would have to pay an attorney to do, because they actually do well, okay. So I am sure there's probably a template, as there is on anything on the internet. But when I'm dealing with property and an actual legal description, and I want to make sure that it's filed properly, I usually always caution people and say, hey, you should use an attorney. Payable on death, you can put those down yourself. Transfer on death, if you have an account at Edward Jones or Merrill Lynch or with us, you can do transfer on death yourself. Very easy. Beneficiaries, very easy. But anytime you do property or anything that you want to make sure that the legal description is not messed up, or you transposed a number or a letter, I always recommend that you use an attorney. That way you know that it's filed properly. But I guess by the letter of the law, there's probably a template online that you could use.
And here's the very last one we're going to do is, what is the benefit of term life versus basic life? Is it more affordable, and is there a cash value option?
Yeah, so term life is actually what I do personally. There's not a cash value, and so people could go, well, you're just throwing money away. And that's true to some case, but it's usually, term life is usually much more cheaper than any other form of insurance. And like I said, in your mind that you're doing that for just the instance that something happens. So use me again personally as an example. When I bought a term life policy when I was 40, my concern was, what happens if I get hit by a big truck when I'm 47? Because once again, all these other pieces should come into place as I get older. So some form of Social Security, some form of retirement. but that's not going to be in place when I'm 42, 43, or 47. And so I didn't want my family to be destitute or have to vacate the home or whatever the obstacles may be that someone runs up against. So I got a term policy that covers me for that 30-year period. I can look back at 70 and go, well, I could have spent that money on something else. Well, if I was 43 and got hit by a big truck, I'll be glad, you know, my kids and my wife and kids would have been very thankful that it was in place.
Absolutely. And you can do it for whatever term you like, and it is, like you said, it's not as expensive, so
Yeah,
that's really good.
absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you all so much for joining us. I see we got to all the questions that were in the chat box, and one lady just made a comment about learning the hard way, about the original will not having a copy, that it's going to be required for probate. So don't keep the original will in the safe deposit box, she's saying. That you would need a court order to open a safe deposit box, or you would have to have that person to have access to your safe deposit box in case of the death. And so those are executed or isn't on the safe deposit in advance. So you definitely want to make sure you do some of this stuff in advance. So anyway, thank you all so much, and we hope you enjoyed it and you got your questions answered, and we hope you have a wonderful and blessed day.